It is just shocking that the U.S. government is standing before the world and saying we have been accused of committing war crimes by this organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1999, Doctors Without Borders, and we will refuse to allow anybody other than ourselves to investigate ourselves. That is completely lacking in all credibility. And if people really think that the United States committed an innocent error, that we had really good intentions in our heart as always, and we would never do such a thing, why won't they allow what Doctors Without Borders called for this morning, which is an independent body constituted under the Geneva Conventions that exists exactly for this purpose, where there's evidence that a war crime has been committed. There's a body that exists under the Geneva Conventions that is supposed to investigate, be impartial and independent and transparent in their findings. The idea that you're going to block that kind of an investigation when you're the U.S. government and say that only we will investigate ourselves is the behavior of a guilty party.
Okay, Glenn Greenwald is right. This is just another American cover-up of another American war crime. The most important part of the video probably for me was when the little blonde news model says, "Oh, and what would how would America be charged with the war crime, and what would that look like?" Because even though America commits war crime after war crime, they never get charged with anything. They just go around and blow shit up, talking about, oh, we have to fund the Defense Department. We have to fund the killing machine. We have a lot more hospitals to blow up, don't you know? Yeah, we better make sure it's fully funded too. We want to make sure, because otherwise the veterans suffer. Because if we can't blow up as many hospitals as we want, the veterans are going to suffer. Because that's what the Defense Department is. It's a killing machine. Goes and kills women and children in your name, in the good name of America. Countries you never heard of. Countries were not declared with war. Obama apologized, okay? They're saying, oh, Obama apologized for this horrible war crime, blowing up a hospital. He didn't just blow up a hospital. He took out all the medical care for a city of 300,000 people. Women, children, old people, all the medical care, 300,000 people in the middle of a war zone where people are having to walk around on shrapnel and getting shot at, bullets everywhere. Okay, I mean, it's not just blowing up a hospital. And he says, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see an apology. Did you see Obama on video apologizing? Did you see some kind of statement, you know, up on the screen where it said, oh, I apologize because what we did was wrong? No, because they won't admit that they're wrong. Okay? They don't do that. It's just like the cops can't admit to their wrong. And you know why they can't admit to their wrong? Because if they say, oh, what we did was wrong, then that means we have to change something so that we don't do wrong again. We have to go, okay, what we did, that was wrong. Now we have to correct so that we don't do this wrong thing again. The cops never admit that they were wrong at any wrongdoing. Never. Just like the Pentagon. Okay, because we have a lot more hospitals to blow up in countries that were not declared. I mean, it's just war crime after war crime. You understand? We blow up wedding parties in countries that we're not declared at war with. And then we blow up the ambulances that go and try and help the people that we just blew up at the wedding party. And then we blow up the funerals, which is war crime, war crime, war crime. And nothing ever happens. Okay? The only way this stops, you know, you keep hearing me say, one of these days this war is going to end. One of these days this war is going to end. If I got anything to do with it. You need to feel that way too. You need to do everything that you can do to make the war end. You have to decide, one of these days this war is going to end. I'm going to put my best effort forth to do what I know how to do to make that happen. That's the only way it ends. Not some new president. Bernie Sanders not going to make this fucking war crime after war crime after war crime end. He's not. He's going to be the next war criminal in chief. He's not. He's not going to be president. But if he were to be, that would be his position. Only you can make it stop. Obama, oh, I'm sorry. 4 days later, Obama apologizes for blowing up a hospital, for taking out all the medical care for a city of 300,000 people. Obama apologized 4 days later. It takes him, what, 15 minutes to get on TV after a mass shooting and push his fucking gun control agenda down our throats? It takes 4 days to not admit any wrongdoing in a war crime again. Thank you very much. I just I'm going to have to talk a little bit on some of these videos, because otherwise CNN will take me down, because, you know, I'm making them look bad. Anyway, thanks very much, and stay cool. Wednesday's war's going to end. If you decide it's going to happen, we can make it happen.
We just got word that President Obama has just apologized to the chief of Doctors Without Borders, whose hospital in Afghanistan was just decimated by U.S. airstrikes, a deadly raid that the U.S. now says was accidental. The clinic, which lost 12 staff members in the attack that killed at least 22, renewing calls for a war crimes investigation against the United States military. Joining me now to discuss this, Glenn Greenwald, co-founding editor of The Intercept and author of No Place to Hide, Edward Snowden, the NSA, and the U.S. surveillance state. Glenn, thank you for coming on. As we know, and as you point out in your article, the story has changed several times now. What is your reaction to the president's apology today?
Well, Doctors Without Borders, the organization that has run this hospital for 5 years, has made very clear that they're not most interested in hearing apologies or claims of mistake or collateral damage. They want only one thing, and that is an independent, impartial investigation to find out what really happened here, who made the decision to bomb this hospital, and what it is that they knew. And unfortunately, the U.S. government, even through today, as President Obama is apologizing, has made clear that they will refuse to cooperate with that kind of an investigation, because they say they're investigating themselves. And I think whatever side of this debate you're on, you should want a real investigation into what happened here.
So you clearly feel like the president's apology not enough at all. I want to play some sound from the White House from the spokesperson there who touched on what you just raised about the investigations. Let's take a listen.
There still is more that needs to be learned, however, about how exactly this happened. The president has called for the kind of investigations that will yield a full accounting of what transpired. There is already underway an investigation that's being conducted by the Justice Department. There are also investigations that are ongoing that are being led by NATO, and a separate third investigation that is a joint investigation that's being carried out both by the United States and Afghan officials.
So we just heard from Josh Earnest, a lot of investigations there. But Glenn, how independent can an investigation be if it is coordinated by the U.S.? What are the other options here?
It is just shocking that the U.S. government is standing before the world and saying we have been accused of committing war crimes by this organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1999, Doctors Without Borders, and we will refuse to allow anybody other than ourselves to investigate ourselves. That is completely lacking in all credibility. And if people really think that the United States committed an innocent error, that we had really good intentions in our heart as always, and we would never do such a thing, why won't they allow what Doctors Without Borders called for this morning, which is an independent body constituted under the Geneva Conventions that exist exactly for this purpose, where there's evidence that a war crime has been committed. There's a body that exists under the Geneva Conventions that is supposed to investigate, be impartial and independent and transparent in their findings. The idea that you're going to block that kind of an investigation when you're the U.S. government and say that only we will investigate ourselves is the behavior of a guilty party.
So, speaking of war crimes, you point that out. We know that armed forces are forbidden from indiscriminate attacks, but laws do recognize that mistakes are made in the, quote, fog of war. In your view, Glenn, should the U.S. be prosecuted for a war crime, and how exactly would that happen?
Well, what I know is this. I don't know what happened here, nor does anybody else, but what I know is that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this was not a mistake. The U.S. government was repeatedly notified of the exact GPS coordinates of this hospital. They called them in the middle of the attack and said, frantically begging, please stop bombing, you're bombing our hospital. The Afghan special forces 3 months ago invaded this hospital because they were angry because they thought there were Taliban fighters there. There has been all kinds of hostility directed by the Afghan army toward this exact hospital, and Afghan officials have come out and said, not that this is an accident, but that what we did was target this hospital and we were right to do it because there were Taliban there. So there's so much evidence that this wasn't a mistake. And unfortunately, the United States has actually been accused, and lots of people have found it guilty over the past 20 to 30 years of committing war crimes, but because it's the most powerful country in the world, we're very good at telling other countries they have to hold their own war criminals accountable, but we're very good at exempting ourselves. The question as Americans is whether that's something that we want to continue to tolerate, that our own government in our own country is singularly exempt and permitted to commit war crimes.
Glenn Greenwald, we have to leave it there, but thank you very much for coming on, sharing your perspective.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.